Okay, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations to everyone who found this room. And very good, an interesting panel and hopefully very good contributions. Actually, it's too late to say good morning, so welcome you for this lunch session that we have now. And what we plan to do is to discuss about inclusive invisible cities, and the core question, I suppose many of you know the book by Italo Calvino on the invisible cities. And when this title and the call for papers came out from ISOCARP, my first idea was fantastic title for a conference, but we should ask if there are really invisible cities. And well, when you think in the literal sense of the word of it, there might be people, blind people, people with visual impairments, for the cities might be widely invisible, but it doesn't know that there is no orientation, that the cities are just black for them. Even when reading Calvino, you realize that in your brain, you can make up the city just by imagination. Or of course, you can orient with your other senses, not the visual senses. And just by coincidence, when this call came up, we are just in a project called CE Spaces Fall that deals basically with tourism in more or less rural areas for persons with disabilities. And Blaž will give us an introduction to this project, Space Fall, for the start. And afterwards, we will have other contributions. Let me just quickly scroll through it, what the program is, what the idea is. So Blaž will start. Then hopefully it works that Klaus Höckner will give us an intro and overview of Accessible EU. Then Daniele Marano will tell us something about invisible cities in everyday life. And Rachele Paolucci will tell us about from smart cities to human cities. And afterwards we have Neha, who is specialized in organizing tourism for persons with disabilities. And to close the session, or last speakers, we have Professor Alia Roof, who will comment on some aspects and giving us the idea of what role do cultural and other or linguistic differences play when it comes to invisible cities. Okay, I'm done after this morning. This is, it doesn't matter because we changed the presentation. This was just, as we are so many people in the room, is so crowded, it was necessary to get some silence in here. And now I hand over to Blaž.
Thank you, Manfred, for the introduction. Good morning. I'm Blaž Barbaric from Geodetic Institute of Slovenia. We are coordinating the project that Manfred already shortly introduced. So we are focused on the improving accessibility of tourism for persons with disabilities in Central Europe. So I will shortly present the challenges for persons with disabilities in urban and rural areas, short facts about the Spaces for All projects. Then, since we are a scientific, more or less conference methodology, how we collected the data and displaying the data, presented one of our tangible results, web accessibility viewer, and also forthcoming activities regarding developing tools and services. Yes, accessibility, as it is written, is a fundamental right and a critical aspect of inclusive design, so design for all. And still many public spaces and even rural areas and tourist destinations still present significant challenges for persons with disabilities. So there's a lot of barriers that they have to tackle by their mobility, by their movement into urban spaces, and especially in rural areas. So we are focusing on problem how to make the solutions, and to also make their life easier, so improve their quality of life. We identified that there's a lack of awareness about these problems. So these projects spent a lot of activities regarding raising awareness and sharing knowledge about the importance of the accessibility. And the other part of the projects is focused on the data that we collected. So we collected barriers within the buildings, outside the urban areas, and then in the rural areas to establish a database foundation for better decisions and preparing better strategies that is solving these problems. So some short facts about the projects. We applied for this project 2 years ago. Last year, the project was approved. We are 16 project partners, 12 project partners from 6 countries within the European Union. We have 3 pilot regions, so we are focusing our activities on the cross-border areas: Slovenia, Hungary, Croatia, Austria, and Czech Republic, and we have 1 pilot area in the Podkarpatsky region in southeast Poland. So 3 pilot areas where we are implementing our activities, and we are involving persons with disabilities. So all 3 vulnerable groups. I will describe later on more about this. And as mentioned, beside the awareness raising, the accessibility to data in tourism is very important. That's why we prepared methodology, how to collect the data. Then we defined also our mapping areas in urban spaces and in the rural areas, in national parks if possible. We collected data, as mentioned, indoors and outdoors, and we are implementing these activities together with persons with disabilities, not just for them, but with them. So everywhere where it is possible, we include them into our projects as project partners. If this was not possible, then we include them as associated partners to implement and to be part of our project. Now some short description of the methodology. First, we started with the preparation for pilot testing, so for collecting the data. Then we collect the data on the terrain, on the field, and then we also visualize data. We developed web-based accessibility, so-called web-based accessibility viewer. Here are some graphics about the methodology, how we started with capturing and displaying the data. I will just shortly present this through our next slides. So firstly, we upgraded already existing methodology that we have developed within our national project in Slovenia. And we used 2 ISO standards. So all data are standardized regarding the 2 standards, as you can see: construction, accessibility, and usability of the built environment, and ISO standard regarding the tourism and related services, which was perfect because we are just focusing on this topic within our project. So within methodology, we describe a lot of detailed schemes like these for parking places, also photos how the parking places should be accessible and designed, and also about tactile, informative structures for blind people, and then we educate all our partners how to start collecting the data. We use OpenGIS software, Open Data, QGIS, OpenStreetMap, Google Street View. And very important is that at the beginning of the projects, we service providers, those who express their interest to collaborate with us within the projects. Why this is important? This is important because we are developing also tools and services. And regarding this, we really want to involve them at the beginning of the project so that they are the part of the process when we are developing also or upgrading their already existing touristic offer. So they would like to participate to get the knowledge and to somehow upgrade their touristic offer that they already have. Then we define the mapping areas in which pilot region we defined 2 or 3 urban areas and 2 or 3 areas in the rural area, so natural parks is possible. And within these areas, we select several so-called nodes or mapping sites that we collected the data. So we use inclusive approach. So we include persons with mobility impairments, blind people, and persons with visual impairments, and deaf people and persons with hearing impairments at our project. And we collected all the data regarding methodology. Firstly, we collect all the data in the office, so with already existing open data. Then we verify the data on the field and also collect additional data on the field. So we capture the data within the QGIS and verify these data and capture additional data if needed with the Q field. This is very good application which is totally compatible with QGIS, so we could transfer all the data to mobile phones and collect the data. Here are graphical representation which data we collected regarding our methodology and our model that we developed. You could see all 8 categories within the urban areas and also within the rural or natural parks. Within the Q field, you could really easily collect new data, add attributes where needed, so line and point data. So it's quite, and also topologically correct the data. Here is a short movie, video clip, how it is working. So all pre-prepared data we QGIS we transfer to Q field on the mobile phone. Persons on wheelchair will now just verify the data, verify the attributes, add new attributes, and save the data. And we have updated barrier within in front of the touristic attraction in the museum. This example at our database. We already assess this data if the building is or the area is completely accessible with assistance or not accessible. And finally, we visualize all this data in so-called web accessibility viewer. This is a free accessible online tool where we present all types of barriers. It is accessible and prepared in 7 languages. It is you could download all the data freely, and you could also communicate. So, given your opinion about this data through one functionality. So we use this participatory approach also here. The photos are the key element. So you could have hundreds of attributes, but the photo tells you everything, let's say. For municipalities, it's really important to remove the barriers in public spaces, to ensure accessibility standards, to analyze the data, and also to maintain this data within the viewer. So they are, in this way, the maintenance is also planned to be assured in this way. Tourist boards, tourist providers, they have now a lot of data to support their business, local business, and promote tourist attractions, and of course disability organizations to learn and share awareness of good practice example. And the last few slides are concerning the development of tools and services. So all knowledge that we collected during projects, all problems that we expose will be encountered to the developments of new solutions, better solutions to better mobility, accessibility to tourist attractions. So we are now planning which tools and which services will be developed to improve the accessibility to tourism locations, and also action plans to improve will be prepared, and also joint strategy for the Central European Union. And this database will also serve the European Commission to prepare better strategy regarding the accessibility for persons with disabilities. But now, because nowadays they have a lack of accurate and standardized data. So this project is, and this methodology will be used also on wider level. We also get the award, Diversity in Research Award, from the Boca University in Vienna this summer, and we are very proud of it. So Manfred and Tatiana, thank you again for this effort. And we are also announced on the European Commission, where our projects is between on the accessible EU pages of the European Commission. Thank you very much for your attention. 30 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Blaž. Okay, we are, on the one hand, we are short in time. On the other hand, Judith said if there are immediate questions, we should have them now and not later on in a common discussion. So are there any immediate questions? Yes, Judith.
Yes, thanks very much for that. I would like to link that to what the discussion was at the previous session. And it was about the linearity of planning, ideas, develop a methodology, data collection, verifying, blah, 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 plans. And then implementation. I mean, in my view, and people share it, implementation is something completely different and is handled by completely different people. So my question here is, I was very interested in doing this alternative approach, not in terms of planning process, but in terms of whom you address, very important. Now, who is implementing this? Is anything implemented at all? And if not, who is preventing the implementation?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I will start answering based on experience that we have with similar project in Slovenia, where we are covering 19 municipalities with similar methodology. And we collect the data and we show this data to them, to the decision makers, to the municipality, to the spatial planners. And we also create so-called digital atlas of the barriers of one municipality. So they have all the data exposed, and based on these data, they use this data for preparing investment plan for improving the barriers on one hand, and when they are renewing, let's say, the old city center, they also these spatial planners also have this data available. So when they are building new market or something like this, they are aware where are these barriers, where are the inaccessible entrances and so on, so that they also use this data to improve not just the market, but also all the barriers that are existing around the market. So this database is potential for investments and better spatial planning in a later phase. Yeah.
If I just may add to this, and I think it's important to know the background of Blaž, that he's the leading expert of the Geodetic Institute of Slovenia, and so they have big experience with building up this data infrastructure and information infrastructure. And the important thing for the project is that we have to have the people that can technically implement this, and we have the users, and we have the associations of persons with disabilities all together in one project. Yeah? Because everybody can have good ideas, but somebody has to implement it and make it usable. Okay, one more.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'd just like to applaud you for developing this wonderful tool for identifying different barriers, particularly for people with disabilities. I had a question regarding identifying barriers, particularly for places which have, let's say, some type of sensitivity whenever it comes to preservation. There was a focus on natural areas, so places like regional parks, for example, or places with historic sensitivities. Is there any point when a barrier, let's say, is identified? Is there consideration for this barrier due to certain sensitivities cannot be addressed in any shape or fashion? Or is it just merely identification and then the designer who, let's say, gets this data sort of deals with it in any way possible?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, as you mentioned, we were mostly focused on the tourist points, tourist attraction within the urban areas, and in tourist attraction and in rural areas. And in urban areas, we traveled from the city center to the train station, through the, let's say, municipality buildings, to tourist office point and so on. So we identified all the barriers in predefined paths, and we collected the data. It was interesting that tourist offices with, let's say, status of protection of cultural heritage, they have very limited possibilities to do some changes. And museums also in Slovenia, and similar to Hungary and Croatia. So it was impossible for 10 years to invest in an elevator within the museum, because it's such a historical building, and the measures are so strict that there are still these museums are still mostly inaccessible in Slovenia. We are putting a lot of efforts to discuss with these experts, but they are very strict regarding their rules. So this is a long process, how to improve the accessibility. Similar is with deaf and hard-hearing people. It's very hard to put the hearing loop into the public building in Slovenia, because decision makers, people are not aware that they really help them in the in hospital or in the municipality building. So there's a lot of things to do, and that's why when we expose the data, we came with the persons with disabilities to the place, and then it starts slowly moving. Yeah, the process.
Okay, thank you, Blaž. I think we have to postpone the question if possible, as we really have to continue. Thanks, Blaž. I mean, I do not know if we have a strict time limit afterwards. I wouldn't have seen anything where lunch is served here. I cannot imagine that there will be something. So maybe but still we have to stay in time somehow. Our next speaker is Klaus Höckner. He's joining us from Vienna. And Klaus, maybe you can make a short introduction of yourself, as you have so many functions that I cannot remember them all. And you give us an intro and an overview of Accessible EU, where you are the official Austrian representative for.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me? Yeah. And can you see my screen too?
No.
Hello? Can you see my?
We see you.
Okay. And when I share the screen.
Okay.
You can see the presentation.
We see the presentation and we even see you. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much for having me. I'm sorry not to be not that I'm not in Siena. I would love to be in Siena than to be here in Vienna, because in Vienna it's raining, and the food is better also in Siena. I want to. What I'm the representative of Austria in a project or in a framework that's called Accessible EU, and that's the function why I'm in this role. I'm with you today. I want to set the topic of accessibility in a broader context, and to give you a little bit of the eagle view about this thing. Out of the bubble, nobody knows that we have some very strict regulations in the European Union that are covering accessibility. We have a regulation that's called the Web Accessibility Directive, which is covering all the digital accessibility of public sector websites and apps, for example. And we have an upcoming regulation that's called the European Accessibility Act, which will come in force on the 28th of June next year, which is covering the private sector, and is covering also the private sector in this case, also the tourism industry. And it's the first time ever in Europe that we have also the possibility to enforce accessibility. It was questioned in one of the last questions. Okay, what is about the implementation? Who is implementing it? Yeah. If I don't implement accessibility, for example, how can I, as a person with a disability or as a DPO, that means a disabled persons organization, be sure that this can be enforced? This can be enforced only by suing the people that they have to do this, that they have to do the accessibility, and if they don't do it, they should be enforced by law to set accessibility in place, and that's the case in this area with the European Accessibility Act, which is upcoming next year. We have, I think, somebody from ENAT, from the European Network of Accessible Tourism, also on board in this session, or in one of the sessions. And ENAT is also a part of Accessible EU in this case.
Klaus, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Do you change the slides, because we only see the intro?
No, I'm only introducing myself first. Yeah. Okay. What is?
So the slide stays on.
Okay. What is Accessible EU is one of the flagship initiatives proposed in the European Commission strategy for the rights of persons with disabilities. And it's a resource center which is led by one of the biggest organizations for persons with disabilities worldwide, by ONCE in Spain. ONCE in Spain, if you don't know, is a really big organization which leads and which has the lottery in Spain since 1973. And they have, I think, about 85,000 people working for them. If you buy a lottery ticket, then you buy it from ONCE, for example, when you're in Spain. We have 4 pillars. We have transport, information, built environment, and communication technologies, and one cross-cutting topic, that's standardization, which are covered by this project. And we have several partners on board. As a leader, Fundación ONCE, then ESPD, ENAD, and the UNE, the standardization organization in Spain. And as a partner, as a scientific partner, we have Klaus Miesenberger from the Johannes Kepler University in Linz, and several subcontractors and supporters. Then there are national experts. In Italy, for example, it's Roberto Scano. He sits, I think, in Venice and in Rome, if you want to contact him. If you want to have any contact address or something like that after my presentation, don't hesitate to contact Manfred or me, and then you will get all the information you need. Yeah? That means we have, for the big countries, we have 2 national experts. For the big means for Germany, Italy, France, Spain, and Poland. And the other ones, they only have 1 national expert that are responsible for the implementation of the project. And we have an advisory board. It means we have really all the big names, and we have an advisory board also comprising David Capozzi. David Capozzi is the former executive director of the US Export for the implementation of the Section 508, and the Americans for Disability Act, who is, this is comparable to the European Accessibility Act, but was set into place 30 years before in America. What will we do? What can you and me and all the others do? We can support the implementation of the legislation on accessibility. We are doing it now by talking about it, by speaking about it. The capacity building is also a very, very interesting, important thing, because out of the bubble, nobody knows about it. So make the people aware. We have to connect all the stakeholders that are responsible for the implementation, not to reinvent the wheel, and we have to create a common one-stop shop on accessibility in Europe, where everybody can go to and ask questions on accessibility. And we have to train the professionals on accessibility. And the study, that means that's the cherry on the top. Okay.
Klaus, sorry, but I have to ask you to look at the watch.
Yes, I only have 2 more. I only have 2 more.
Yeah.
The project, we have 500 members per year in the community. We have 60 entries per year in the library. 150 good practices, also from other countries. Yeah, and then what we are offering these 4 pillars. We are a library, workshops. We are offering networks, and we are offering accessibility monitoring and surveillance. And the most important thing for you should be who can participate. All of you can participate. Private, public companies, whatever field you are. Approach one of us, and you can get involved into this project. You can work with us. We can work in one of the pillars. You can also find us in social media, on our website, email, or you contact, as I said before, you contact Manfred, and you will get all the information about me, and or you find me also on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Klaus. I think it was a comprehensive information. I think there's not so much need for discussion, because I think it was quite clear what the initiative is about. And I would really, in this sense of the session and for the timing, ask for the next presentation. As you know, we have Daniele here. Daniele Marano will give us the next presentation. And with the focus on addressing blind and visual impairments in urban planning. And I would say focusing more or less on everyday life. And Okay, Daniele, the floor is yours.
Buongiorno, good morning. So, problem of accessibility now of my presentation. Can you start it? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. DM.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, go on. This one, yes. No, yes, this one, yes. Yes, exactly.
Okay, next one. Yes, my name is Di Marano. I don't want to present here research findings. I'm presenting the situation of a person with disabilities, with visual disabilities. I have a severe visual disability, and
Next slide is here.
okay, sorry. And I want to present some practical experiences which I have myself. I hope also to represent the most of the people with visual disabilities and blindness. This nice building is in Siena, Il Duomo di Siena. I would encourage you to visit it. Inside it's very nice. I assume this is the way you would see it if you stay in front of it. Now, there are some simulation of other disabilities, visual disabilities. For example, this is the classical macular degeneration, which affects elderly people. So very common amongst elderly people. So you can imagine which are the challenges of those people having such a kind of visual disabilities. Or we have other kind of disabilities. This is diabetes retinopathy, which we don't want now to go into medical issue. But just to give you some example of the different heterogeneous group of people with different kind of visual disabilities who may perceive reality in a different way. So this is the cataract. The next one, please. Yeah. This is very common by elderly people. So just to give you an information, I think that the planners who design our city should be aware about the condition or what are our needs, and so to involve people from the beginning. I wanted, yeah, sorry, the one before, there are many tools, I think, for architects and planners to simulate different visual condition to virtual reality application. They're very powerful tools. I think virtual reality should be used by architects and planners, where you can then really jump into such a very realistic way to the reality of a person with visual disability. A very easy to install app, you can do it even right now. It's called Tengo by Vision. Sorry for a Spanish guy. I think you can pronounce it better than me. Is a free of charge application for Android iOS. Simulates very well different visual disabilities, and in conjunction with a VR set is a very nice tool to look around about the city. The next one, please. So the context. We don't have to forget that 15%, according to the World Health Organization, have a sort of disability. I'm not speaking now necessarily about visual disability, a sort of temporary or continuous disability which impairs their lives. So it's a quite huge numbers, 15 to 20% of our population, and we do not have to forget this kind of persons while planning, designing our urban environment. Yes, but we have also some law obligation. Mr. Höckner before said already about the accessibility in the European Union, but we have also the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, with at Article 9 states the opportunity and the necessity to plan urban environments, transport services, and facilities in an accessible way. So this is an obligation. It's not a courtesy. It is an obligation, please, to plan schools, transportation system in an accessible manner. I would like now to show you, to share some very few images before speaking too much about which, for me, for example, the difficulties when I go through a city. I just take some as an example, some pictures. Please don't be offended. Maybe I take for your own city. I don't know. But just for example, what are big hazards? So the big issue we have in the discussion, the community are the so-called shared space. In German, we call it a Begegnungszone, because I assume shared space is a seal which is traded. But anyway, let's for ease of use the word shared space. And you can see here, for person with visual disabilities, this is in Vienna Maria Hilferstraße, when people with a poor sight have to take care of other transportation, cars, bicycle, and so on and so forth. So it's very challenging to. I'm not against the share space personally. I say we have to take care and to plan it correctly in order to allow safety for all the participants in this common, let's say, traffic sharing. So an example could be, for example, we could use a tactile pavement to define the road from the curbs and so on. The second problem we have is, let's say, I would say to have the cities with more contrast, and we have a lot of objects staying around the curbs, like e-scooters, bicycle, all sort of stuff which make it difficult to move yourself in a safe manner. This picture, so for example, a square which is quite unstructured. So if I would be myself here, it's just gray and gray. There's some obstacle in between. This makes it a lot difficult. For people with visual disabilities, for example, stairs are very dangerous. It's a very easy solution we can use. It's just to mark, please, the first and the last stairs, and we are happy. But not only people with visual disability. I think everyone would be glad and recognize better stairs if there is a marking on the first and the last steps. So please, these are very, very easy and cost-effective measure which have a great effect. In this case, not for blind people because they tested with a cane. The next one is the yes, big issue of sharing bicycle ways and ways for pedestrian. Next slide, please. You see, we have a difficulties here, also in Vienna, because how can a pedestrian with poor sight or with good sight to know I am on the right way or I'm now on the cycle way? So this is a big problem arising. I understand that I don't say the lobbying. I understand the necessity to bring more people on a bicycle in the cities, but at the same time, we don't have to create a conflict with pedestrian. And this would be a classical example of a conflict because I could not know where is my right way. So a solution could be, this is the slide, let's say to try to make a tactile differentiation between the way which is used by bicycle and the way used by pedestrian. So we have a sort of a marked edge which allows the people with a cane, also people with poor sight, to with the feet to see or to feel the differentiation. We have also kind of new of type of crossings. Here, please, this slide, this photo. And yes, we have a lot of objects being around, as I said before, without any clear sight how you can recognize it. So we would like to have more clear ways to go without obstacles. The next slide shows you a nice because the cities are even crowded and crowded. So if you go, you have shops, exposures, you have, as I said before, bicycle and so on and so forth. So we would advise to try to plan such ways that we can move as pedestrians in a safe manner. Next slide, please, is the irregular crossings. The slide shows to you how we try to move the traffic. Next slide, please. Not more with the, yes, sorry, this is, I would say this before. Yes, okay. The problem of construction sites which are not marked and which is difficult here to go around. And for people with poor sight in the evening, here you can hurt yourself. And there is in Austria, for example, a regulation how you had to properly mark a construction site. Next slide. Yes, this could be also a possibility to define this area. Next two slide, please. Next one. We have see here that now you cross streets without any traffic lights. This could be a problem for pedestrians, particularly for those with poor sights. In Vienna, for example, next slide, we have 1,000 traffic signals Among those, 850 have acoustic signalization, which is a very high percentage. I don't know, 85, 90%. You could activate the tone to cross the street. So I understand that the new planning tries to avoid this kind of solution, but if you plan a crossing without any traffic lights, then you have to consider how can I think about people which have a poor sight or not sight to cross the street, which is a very big issue. Next slide, please. Yes, the concept of invisible cities, I think I will be short myself here. I think that we have to create cities for all. These slides I want to show you, I show to you, are not meant just to say it's just for these people, it's just for people with blindness, just for people with poor sight. No, we want inclusive sight according to the principle of universal design. Next slide, please. And so we have universal design. We have the European standard, for example, EN 17210. We have the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So I think we have a lot of instruments about regulation, how we could create accessible cities that are visible, not invisible, visible for those people we cannot see them. Next slide, please. Yes, use also best practices. I mean, there are good examples worldwide how you can use assistive technologies. I think I'm optimistic that the technologies could help also people with particular needs to orient themselves. For example, for me, it's quite difficult to move around in Siena, I must say. I mean, because okay, it's an old city, the streets are narrow, and the navigation system showed me always the wrong direction. So for me, also Siena at night is quite horrific to move around alone. But I managed at the end somehow. And so I was saying before, the policy instruments we have, and yes, last next slide, please. Yeah, I said before, the benefits are for all. So I think the planners should also involve the people with disabilities, their association in planning big infrastructure or services, because I think we saw people having a disability themselves somehow knows what their needs. Then you are planner, you are the architect, you know how to use this instrument, but we know what we need. So what we can explain to you, you have to realize it. But please keep on thinking you need a feedback of the people will be then the one who will use and they work around the cities. Yeah. Call for action. Okay, I think this is a team of policymakers, of the entire society, of municipality. So all of us, we have to commit to more sustainable, more green, but also more accessible cities. So please consider that inclusiveness and accessibility is an issue of inclusiveness for all people. I have put some references here at the end, and what my idea was, but we don't have time, because I will thank you, Manfred, that invited me to be present. I brought some simulation tools, but this has some giveaways. You can put it on, and I can give it. I leave it on the table. Who wants to keep it, please, with himself or herself? There are some small giveaways as a simulation tool to look through these glasses and to see a bit a reduction of visual acuity. So I spoke too much and too fast with the typical Italian, sorry. But Manfred told me I have to be quick. I thank you very much. I hope I give you a short glimpse in the world of people with visual disability, and also in my own world, working around the city. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Daniele. One quick question. If somebody has a direct question, I think Daniele is still with us. Okay, please.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for a very interesting presentation. And I think when I came to this special session, when I read, the suggestion, it was very interesting for me because of two things. The first one was the tourism, because it's interesting to I think, to plan for or to react to people with disabilities like blindness in an economical aspect. I mean, tourism, we always look at the people with disabilities from point of view of welfare. And I think that's very, very, very important to put it in an context of something, you know, which is very interesting and very, it can put it on the real agenda, you know, not on the other agenda, on the main agenda, which is very important. Now, the second point is, you know, when you spoke, I thought that we really should put the disabilities and blindness into our planning methodology, not only putting some decoration. The decoration doesn't, you know, it can help, as you said, but it should be a part of our planning methodology. And when, for example, I think about getting off the borders, not putting borders, not putting the, you know, not gathering, but open the space to everyone, we should think also about the disabilities, because, and that's our challenge, not only, you know, taking the wrong planning and putting some decoration, because that's not, I mean, that's a solution, but for here, for now, not for a real change. Okay. And it was brilliant. Thank you very much for very good presentation.
Thank you very much for your remarks. I fully agree with you. We do not to react and to correct something. We have to think broadly, universally, as you said, at the plan stages. So I fully agree with your observation, and thank you very much. I would appreciate that more people would be, let's say, open and sensible to these things, because I mean, we cannot think it say no, it doesn't interest to me. And I also wanted to say something, and I'm concluding here. Accessibility, inclusiveness is not something which is in contrast with aesthetic, with the planning, also innovative solution. So we have to be creative also in terms of accessibility, and this can go one step together. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you again very much, Daniele. I mean, two, 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 two things. I think it's really a pity that our session is so hidden here that there are no urban planners here, basically. This was this, yeah. Yeah, it's an organizational thing that happened here, yeah. This is, I think planners would be interested. We got very good feedback for this session. And 15 to 20% is the international average. Yeah? But on the other hand, I think it's not. Yeah. 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 When looking through these classes, you will not be very happy with me, but I have to tell you, oh, you do not look very sharp today. Okay. Daniele was telling us about more or less everyday life in cities and how to get around, or how cities also should be planned, or what should be taken into consideration. And now we come to the topic. When talking about one city and getting around, it's one thing. But now we have Rachele Palucci, if I pronounce it correctly, from ENAT, the European Network of Accessible Tourism. So we get to the topic of moving around, of being mobile. And Rachele, the floor is yours.
Thank
Please.
you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation on behalf of ENAT, the European Network of Accessible Tourism, and ISE, which is the Italian MS Society. Today, before starting my presentation, just a few words on who we are. So ENAT was founded 16 years ago in Brussels and is an umbrella organization, is a multi-stakeholder association and is composed of tourism organization, businesses, public authorities, but also universities, disability organizations, and accessibility experts. And our goal is to make Europe an accessible destination for all tourists and to promote global accessible tourism. On the other hand, we have ISE, the association I work with, who is the leading organization in Italy for supporting people with multiple sclerosis. And we focus on research, of course, but also on services, and we advocate for the rights of people with multiple sclerosis and with disabilities in general. Our commitment is to inclusion, of course, and accessibility in many aspects, in many areas, also in cultural heritage and public spaces. And both of us, INAT and ISE, we are also part of the Accessible EU tender that Klaus before explained to us. So INAT is a partner of Accessible EU, while ISE has got one of the national experts. Marco, my manager, he's one of the is the Italian national expert for accessibility. So when planning a city or creating a tourist offer, because the two things might go together, we need to think about creating the condition to support everyone on their daily activities. So we are talking about residents and visitors. And the most important thing is to put people in the center, as Space for All is doing, actually. So that is the way we should work. You should work as planners. So the importance is to place people at the center and planning accessible, following the universal design approach. So not a specific tour for sensory impaired people, or not a specific area of the city for wheelchair users. No, we aim to create a place, a city, a space which is for everyone, regardless the condition, the gender, the physical issues whatsoever. So one example that I'm bringing today is from ISE, actually it's from the Italian MS Society, is called Adagio Tours. These tours have been introduced in partnership with a major Italian cruise company. So we created those tours for everyone, not only for people with wheelchair. So these tours are for anyone who might prefer a slow travel. And these tours are really appreciated, not only by the people with disabilities, are really almost fully booked all the time. Why? Because these are for everyone. So they offer slow travel regardless the physical conditions. And they create an inclusive culture where individuals really feel part of the experience, and they do not feel part of a specific tour, specifically thought for people with disabilities. So this is a very important aspect that we have to take in mind while planning a city. So what we have to do is to create smart human cities, not only smart cities, but smart human cities, which are intelligent cities where the different is made by the inclusion of all the disabilities, diversities, religions. So here in this smart human city, accessibility is an element that is not only a technological aspect, but is also a physical and is inside the organization of the city itself. So it's at the center together with the person. Of course, we understand that there are some barriers that are difficult to be removed, especially in cities like Siena, which is an historical city. So sometimes it's not possible. But there is a barrier that we can definitely remove, which is the cultural one. So we should start with the cultural barrier to remove cultural barriers and create more inclusive environments. Of course, information is another pillar of accessibility. So we have to provide accurate and clear information. And training. Training is another aspect which is absolutely important. Is not only school training, is not only training professionals or people working in the tourism sector, is a cultural training. So we have to spread the culture of inclusion and accessibility to all the stakeholders involved. And cooperation networking. This is another important aspect that I saw also before in the project Space for All, where people with disabilities were included in the project, were part of the project. And this is one of the success of the project. I'm sure about that. So cooperation and networking with Association of People with Disabilities who promote inclusion and who can address the concrete needs of individuals. So why accessible tourism can be linked to planning a city? Well, because in accessible tourism, and who will follow me in the presentation will surely tell you that in accessible tourism, we work as a network. So every single service provider must work together with the other one to create an accessible chain. So accessibility is a chain. If one part is not working, the entire experience is destroyed. So in this way, also planners, architects should work as a network together with the same object, the same aim, which is develop a smart human cities and create a welcoming cities for all, transforming urban environments into inclusive destination. So this is my reference. You can also reach INAT, accessibleeu.org, for sharing your comments, thoughts, and to keep in touch. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Rachele. Again, one question is possible. If there should be one, I think it was very clear.
Great. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we continue with the topic of tourism. And Neha, you will tell us also something about the traveling branch and the traveling this.
I don't see my presentation here. I gave you.
Do you have it? You gave it.
I gave it to
Yes.
Minia Drive, but I don't see it here.
Okay. And it was not copied. Okay.
In
ISOCARP.
ISOCARP, that's Planetable.
Ah, yeah.
Which one?
Okay.
Yeah, Planetable, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Sorry.
No.
And there's no clicker, right?
No.
Okay.
We are not so sophisticated.
Okay. Shall I use the mic?
Yeah, I think it's better.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Let's talk business now. I mean, we have all talked about accessible tourism, accessibility in public spaces and spaces for all, but business is important. So here I'm going to talk about travelers with disabilities as a business case for tourism providers. And I'm Neha Arora. I'm the founder of Planetable, which makes tourism accessible for travelers with all types of disabilities. And so let's talk about the business opportunity in terms of few numbers. So like a few of my colleagues did mention that nearly 15 to 20% of the world population has a disability. And we have over 1 billion people over the age of 60, and 46% of them happen to have a disability. And some data about their spending habits. So they usually spend 30% more money than a non-disabled traveler. And when their location, any location or destinations meet their expectations, they tend to be most loyal customers. They come again and again. So globally, we have over 100,000 museums and over 2,500 heritage sites. We are in one of the UNESCO heritage sites at the moment. We have over 15 million food establishments all over the world, 700,000 hotels, which have over 16 million rooms globally. And we are also talking about Airbnbs, which is also 6 million plus, 6 million plus rooms. But when we talk about they being accessible for visitors with disabilities, it's less than 10%. It's in single digits. And we really do not have data mapped to the various disabilities, like what types of disabilities and what types of destinations are accessible for whom. We don't have that data. And when we talk about digital accessibility, because over 68% of the travel transactions are done online. So what about web accessibility and the travel content being accessible for travelers of all types? And we have over 200,000 travel agencies. How many of them are equipped to cater to the needs of travelers with disabilities who have experience in designing experiences for them? The market is wide, the business opportunities is wide, but thanks to our prejudices and some of the various reasons, the industry is not looking into it. So let's look at who are these people. When we talk about 15 to 20% of these world population, who are these people? So not all disabilities are visible. So we talk about people with mobility impairments, people who are blind, people who are deaf, and then we kind of fall into a space where we don't know where we are going globally. So, but we have a large portion of people with disabilities who have cognitive disabilities, psychosocial, learning, sensory, intellectual, have rare diseases, or have medical conditions or temporary disabilities. So this is a huge market, and not all of these disabilities are visible to the eye. And when we are talking accessibility, we should be talking about all of these. So why these gaps exist in the industry or in the urban planning that we are not talking about accessibility? Lack of awareness and training. There is very, very less information about how to do things. In laws and standards, we do talk about, hey, we need to do this, we need to do that. But who's going to tell them how? There is no proper training around that. The perceptions and stereotypes that people with disabilities don't travel. There are not as many people because not many disabilities are visible. And even if some destinations are doing it, they are doing it for legal compliance. It's not for a customer-centric perspective. They are not focusing on the disabled customer. The market size is not realized, of course, because the tourism providers still don't understand the potential that is lying hidden. And if some organizations or destinations have invested in accessibility, there hasn't been a proper return of investment strategy. So they have invested the money, they have invested the time and the effort, but due to lack of market outreach and proper channels, that no one gets to know about it. Like, you did the good work, but you never told the world about it, and the world never got to know about it. So you were like, okay, maybe I did the wrong thing. So this is the finding that there's a stakeholder consultation that we did at United Nations Vienna last year, where in one room we brought together various tourism stakeholders like tourism boards, museums, travel companies, hotels, and people with lived experiences from developed countries and emerging countries, because anything that you see globally is very developed nation focused. But these are two different worlds. There is a first world and third world thing that exists. And the biggest finding was what a destinations or a business considers to be accessible and what is the expectation of the traveler, there is a huge wide gap. So if you see the green dots show that what the tourism advocates and providers are, where they stand in the line. And the purple is the purple economy, like the people with disabilities. So if you see, they're on the two opposite ends. So we have to find a middle ground where the tourism providers meet the expectations of the travelers. So what does an accessible experience look like in urban and regional planning actually? So we have been talking a lot about physical infrastructure, as in how do we make it accessible for various disabilities. But in addition, we need to have trained and sensitized professionals because tourism is about people. It's about human. And we cannot skip the human factor when it comes to hospitality. Accessible communication, assistive technology integration. So like we live in a world where people with disabilities are using the best in class technology to have an equitable livelihood and daily living and traveling. But that is not finding an integration into the tourism spectrum or in urban planning. The human accessibility, of course, that's a huge factor. A building could be completely accessible, meet all the standards. But if the humans there are not sensitive and are not welcoming, it defeats the whole purpose of that accessibility. It means it's not accessible. And of course, information being in accessible formats for people of all types of disabilities. So this is what a customer journey actually looks like. It does not start when a traveler reaches a destination. It starts when they think about traveling. Hey, I want to travel. And they go online. Do they find travel content which is accessible for them? Do they find information about accessibility that matches their accessibility requirements? No. So if they find that information, then they go to the next step of booking. And once that happens, then they select the item, buy it, make the payment. And that is the first cycle when tourism happens. The second phase happens when they reach the destination. And when they go around the place, the hotel that they have found in the first phase, the museums that they have found, the service providers that they have found, and then they come back after having a memorable experience. Providing a feedback loop that how accessible was that destination for them. So that completes the whole customer journey. So like here is a little brief about what language to use, which forms an important aspect of human accessibility, like the right terminology, whether you use person first or identity first language, avoid labels and stereotypes, and not limiting our language only to verbal, but your body language also. Like how do you communicate in person while you are communicating with a disabled person? So what does an ideal version of inclusive urban planning for tourism purpose looks like? It has to be seamless, adaptive, and provide a quality experience, focusing on the customer and their needs. It has to be like intention-led, not legal compliance focused, that we want to provide a good customer experience to a disabled traveler. It should be based on real-time data points about the accessibility of the destination. It has to be equitable, because why should a disabled traveler pay more than a non-disabled traveler? And why they, even if they are paying equal, why due to inaccessibility of the destination, they have a subpar experience? Why they don't deserve it? No one deserves a subpar experience by spending the same amount of money, and it is tailored to their needs. So this is like, I haven't talked about my organization much yet. So this is how we evolved over the years. So we started off as a travel design and service provider for travelers with all types of disabilities. So I come with only 40 years of experience of accessibility, which is pretty much my age. because both my parents are persons with disabilities, so I've lived with it, and I have invisible disabilities myself. So we started with travel design, moved to destination development because somehow we knew that the destinations are not ready to welcome travelers with all types of disabilities, which moved to training and sensitization of the workforce and the ecosystem. Then we use that experience to consult destinations, other travel companies, or hotels, tourism boards, and museums to make it accessible by design, because we do not need separate travel companies for disabled people in the first place. Accessibility and inclusion has to be mainstreamed into the tourism and hospitality space, into our urban planning, into our regional planning. And there has to be standardization, which is not legal compliance focused, rather customer centric focus, where the destinations, urban planners, and service providers focus on a customer centric approach, and they want to do it, they aspire to deliver a good experience to them. And why it is a big opportunity? Well, we have the mystic travelers of the 70s who, in their old age, are still wanting to travel. We have multi-generational families because of the aging population who are still looking at traveling with their families and friends. Now they're retired. We are globally talking a lot about sustainable tourism and responsible tourism, but we always talk about climate change when we talk sustainability. We miss out on the social in the ESG, and accessibility is an important factor when we talk about sustainability and meeting the sustainable development goals. So if we talk about sustainable tourism, accessibility and inclusion maps to 7 of the sustainable development goals. And we have a large spectrum of disabilities recognized globally. It of course differentiates where you are in the world. Some countries recognize more disabilities than the others. But yes, these people are living on this planet, where you can start as a destination, as an urban planner, evaluate where you are, how accessible you are at the moment or not, build a roadmap, like how you will do it in phases, because it's not something that you do it in one go and the project ends. It's a constant evolution. And allocate the resources and build a holistic plan for accessibility. I'm just ending, I know. So how can we help? Well, we can help you choose the right partner, evaluate and help you allocate right and appropriate resources based on your destination requirements, in helping in building your policies and roadmaps, audit and consultation, inclusive product and service design, training, implementation and certification, market outreach, and direct feedback loop to the customer, because we are a service provider too at the end of the day. Some of the pictures, like if you see here, these are some of the people when they are visiting destinations which could be accessible or not accessible, and the disability could be visible or invisible. So here you have a blind person, a person in a wheelchair, and a person with dementia, or people who are deaf, elderly, multi-generational families, people with cognitive disabilities, or people who are deaf or hard of hearing. Again, but we also have to talk about intersectionality. We cannot just talk about disability as a separate group, because there are women with disabilities, there are people from the LGBTQ plus community with disabilities, and they want to travel mixed. Like if you see a picture on the left, it's a picture of mixed group of various disabilities. And just to highlight, the picture on the right are my parents. So that is where it all started, my friends. So my father is blind and mother is a wheelchair user. And that's how I had to start Planet Able, to solve the problem that was not getting solved. So here again, you don't see any disability visibility, but there is a blind couple on top. There is an amputee family on the right, and then a person with cognitive issues again on the left. So some of the feedback from our travelers and from our like the companies we consulted and destinations we consulted. And yeah, time for Q&A.
Thank you, Neha. So now we have two contributions on traveling and tourism for persons with disabilities. Is there a question to it?
Yep.
Thank you for that was a very good presentation. We're looking at stability, business opportunity, we're looking at gaps. And the gaps.
Yeah.
You mentioned development and the underdeveloped nation. How do you bridge this and create this business? Did you find some planning solutions?
Yes. Yeah. So yes, there's a first world and there is a second world. But then there are the things that both can learn from each other. And we have to find a standard that works, like that's harmonized for both the developed nations and the developing nations. How do we do that? Let me give you an example. So if I think at the COP 23 or 24, there is the energy minister of Israel, who is in a wheelchair. She was there at the conference and she could not get inside because there were stairs and it was not accessible. She waited 2 hours and she had to go back because she just could not get inside. There were two steps. But had this happened, not in a developed country, but in an emerging country, for example, like India or Sri Lanka, Thailand, it would have taken 30 minutes to create a temporary ramp and make it accessible. Because you would not have gotten into the compliance and all of that complications or regulation stuff. So this is like how prompt action works in an emerging country, which the developed nation can learn from that. And in terms of culture aspect, so if you talk about culture, anyone in the developed nation is more individualistic model because they believe that you can manage the country when it comes to Nashville and until you ask them for help. But in an emerging country, culturally, they will hold you. You need let it go. Can I help you in any way? So this forms the human factor when it comes to tourism and hospitality. And I think this emerging world can teach like the hospitality industry that it's not always a person would ask for assistance. Sometimes it has to be intuitive and it has to be in a design thinking model. Hey, is there something they can do? It's like this, the professionals in the ecosystem should have that mindset, right? That if they see something that might need assistance, instead of waiting for them to ask, they should go and ask, can I help you in any way? Or be prepared for any of the various scenarios that might happen. Does that answer your question?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Neha. Thank you also very much, Daniele, again, for this intro. Daniele, of course, for the daily life challenges. And now I may ask Ali for some comments, maybe. We already have been into this discussion already about cultural differences, language barriers, mindsets, and so on. So please give us your comments on that.
Sure.
You need something here?
No.
So, cultural and/or linguistic differences when it comes to
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, first, I want to start by thanking Manfred for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity to comment and reflect on the excellent presentations that we heard today. But at the same time, if you allow me, I want to be a bit shedding light from a different perspective. And I would try to establish a more radical approach where I will challenge the focus on the notion of accessibility. And I want to start by the notion of how we train architects and urban planners, because the whole process of preparing architects and urban planners is based on the notion of creating beautiful spaces, creating places that will be first and foremost perceived by people who can see. So the element of seeing, the element of visual perception is right in the core of architecture and urban planning education. And this is something that's important to acknowledge, and I will revisit it in a minute. Also, it was clearly reflected in most of the presentation that when we talk about cities for all, we are talking about how the city would accommodate the way people would move in the city, particularly people with disabilities. And therefore, how people with wheelchairs will have a sort of a smooth movement in the city, or how if they need to climb the staircase, there will be a sort of an elevator or a ramp, and so on and so forth. Why I want to challenge this? Because of number one, I want to go back to Calvino, Invisible Cities, because the whole beauty of the book was the invitation of using our imagination to portray space, to portray life, to portray a different interpretation of the relation between people and spaces. It's not about how a person with a wheelchair can enter this room, but how this person would feel, would experience it. Another interesting notion, if you are aware of the excellent urban theorist and philosopher Henry III, in his amazing book, The Production of Space, where he distinguished between three main categories of spaces: the perceived space, the lived space, and the imagined space. And he said, when you want to create a rich experience of people, it's not only about the lived space, but it's more about the perceived and the imagined space. How you will be able within your urban design and urban planning to motivate people to enjoy a different kind of experience. Now, you heard me saying the word experience more than one time, because this is exactly what I'm inviting my colleagues to consider. How to move from our current understanding of cities for all as a matter of accessibility to a matter of experience. And therefore, I would argue that we need to have a comprehensive understanding of spatial experience, a comprehensive understanding of how to make spaces more rich, more holistic. Let me share with you some ideas regarding it. How to feel the city, how to hear the city, how to smell the city, how to taste the city, how to touch the city, I am calling for a multi-sensory approach to urban design and urban planning, by which, when we claim that we are designing cities for all, it's not about accessibility. It's not about encouraging tourism, because if we have a specific resort area where healthy people are coming to enjoy the hotels, we might not consider even people with disabilities. The hotels are packed with people, healthy people in Las Vegas. Why I have to consider? But if we consider the notion of holistic spatial experience for everyone, this is a different story. Now, if we consider this, you might question how much energy we put either in preparing the future architects and urban designers, or in creating the blueprints for our spaces and cities, how much energy we put in questions related to how people would hear the city, what kind of soundscape we are creating for people, how people would smell the city. Remember when I talked again about Calvino and Lefebvre and the notion of imagined spaces? If you are smelling the city, if you are hearing the city, if you are touching the city, you will start to have a story in your mind, even if you are blind, but you're not blind anymore. So what I'm trying to say, and I subscribe so much to what my dear friend Danielle was sharing with us, I am calling for a movement from the typical words that sometimes imposed on us, like cities for all, without knowing what exactly we mean by that. Accessibility, and we limit it only on how people will access it. Encourage tours, and then if the hotels are doing fine without people with disabilities, then they would not give a damn even about them. I am excited more about a comprehensive approach where on the school level and also on the practice level, we will move from focusing on the notion of accessibility, focusing on the notion of we are only rewarding people that can see and can walk, to a situation where we are focusing on the notion of spatial experiences. And once we focus on that, we will move from one sensory approach to multi-sensory approach. Thank you so much for having me.
I need some exercise, don't worry. Thank you very much, Ali. Yes.
Thank you for your inspiring words. I don't want to have the last word because, no, thank you very much. And what you said goes in the mainstream of, sorry, the word, for inclusive art. As you said, applies exactly in terms of making art enjoyable with a multiple sense. So it means that when we speak, just let me, for the sake of understanding, when we speak now for accessible art experiences, we now want to address all the people with and without disabilities, addressing them in a multisensory dimension, because also people which have not disabilities can enjoy art from multiple dimensions. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniele. Okay, Judith. Is it do you want to make up a summary for the session, or is it just a comment on this?
I'm sorry, I would like to challenge a few things I heard, including what Ali said. I understand integration, holisticity, all that sort of stuff. We're writing books about it. I also understand the kind of designs you have showed, painted on the floor. This is for cyclists, this is for pedestrians, this is blah, blah, blah. Nobody respects it, my experience. Absolutely, in London, it's the Wild West. It is everyone for himself. So I think what we are completely omitting, never mind the multi-this and the other, is human behavior. You cannot plan human behavior. You have to start somewhere else, and without adaptation of human behavior, of human human approach, which should be more open, more holistic, more integrated, more cohesive, more collegiate, etc., etc. More human, actually. I think we are missing the point as planners.
We do completely agree with you. The training I was referring before is the cultural training, which is training for all. So we have to raise awareness like we are doing today to the general public, to the professionals, to everyone, because the first barrier is the cultural one. So people who are not respecting the line are those who, in those we have to remove the barrier. So this is the cultural one. Training, 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 and
Yes, thank you.
Also, just to add to what she said, yes, the human factor is important and training is also important, but it has to come from an aspirational point of view for the people, wherein we have to make people with and without disabilities experience each other. Because we cannot just give them like, okay, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, your hesitation around. Yeah. Well, we all are trying.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, also I want to key into commending our presenters, our teachers. You really done well in these presentations. But one thing is, you've not gone to the areas of developing countries. You mentioned it. Where all these activities, issues have been tried to be effective, but all efforts are not seen. The reason why we are here, now I'm from Nigeria, Africa, is to take knowledge from these developed countries, from all our teachers that are seated here, back to my countries, to influence all these sustainable environment. But in the course of these studies, when the president was talking about cities for all, where every form of people, every class of people will have inclusiveness. Thank you. Inclusiveness in the use of the cities. But in Africa, let me say Nigeria, we did a lot, but few or little are seen. But we come in here to develop country, we see things working, things are taking shape. We've been to Canada, we come here, we've been to Malaysia, those places. I want more of these explanations on returning back to the country, on how we can influence things, most especially, in the areas of synergizing, in the areas of convincing the governance, in the areas of bringing what we've learned here into fruition over there.
and solution to this. Yeah, implementations. We need practicals. We need things change. You know, we want to be enough of theory. Let's go to practical, seeing it. Please, more explanation on that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I do not say that I could make a conclusion now, but I just want to wrap up a little, and maybe Judith then wants to make something like a conclusion, as she was coordinating the whole thing here with the special sessions. But I think what we saw in this session, only in this one session, is we covered a very wide range. Blaž started with the project CE Spaces for All. Him as with a more technical background, we do the mapping, we build the information infrastructure, which is a foundation to remove barriers, for example, to acknowledge barriers, to find ways to remove them. Yeah, okay, in this case we were talking about physical barriers mainly. We moved on, of course on, yeah. And Klaus gave us this remote presentation about initiatives on in this case, on the European level, which are important, but which do not solve the problems, as we agree, yeah? But they are part of it. Then we heard Daniela with his very practical experiences and showing us very, very good examples how it actually is, or it can be seen in this case with visual impairments. And we only cover a very small spectrum of disabilities that we see with persons with disabilities. We had two contributions from Rachele and from Neha on tourism aspects, traveling for persons with disabilities. And Ali gave us a philosophical comment on what a city should be like, what space should feel like, and that it's not only a visual thing and not only a physical thing in the sense of barriers or whatever and moving, but it is a holistic experience. Now we already got into the discussion, and I have time, so it just depends when they kick us out here. But as long as we can, and if you're interested, we keep on discussing, I would say. I just wanted to line out, not to forget the practical projects. I think in Spaces for All, we work quite practical with having on the one hand, the technical foundations, on the other hand, really working with the people, going out, mapping what are real disabilities, working together with the associations. We have seen very practical examples, and we know it needs everything. It needs the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It's very important that there's a UN Convention about that shall be implemented in the countries. Yeah, it was adopted by the European Union. Basically, the member states should adopt it to the national law. That has happened in many countries. But if you go out to the tourism sector, what I can say, there's a very few people who know about it. A UN convention is not something that you can work on a daily basis and say, it's there, it's important. It is important that it's there, but as we heard now in the last comment, how do we come down to the practical approach? Judith, do you want to add something to that?
No, I think it was good that we had some kind of response. It's very interesting what you presented, but my point is one size does not fit all, just not. So why are we constantly doing this? Concentrating reductionism, old-fashioned thinking, enlightenment, excuse me, you know, we have cracked that, not just the planners. So I agree with you, exactly. We are so visual, so we are focusing on that. There are the other senses. I have been walking here this morning. I almost suffocated because people were traveling to work with their little stinky motorcycles in these narrow streets. It was terrible. I'm vomiting because it was so awful. You know, and besides, you are in a medieval city, you know, where there were no motor cars invented either. I was told there is no handrails for me to go down these steep slopes. He said, well, when it was designed in the Middle Ages, people didn't get over 40, so they weren't like me, you know, couldn't walk very well with bad knees. So they didn't exist. I said, yeah, but the cars didn't exist either. So please, you know, you can't just segregate like that. And I think it's this kind of stuff we can learn in this place. Exactly. That there are different perceptions, different ways of wanting to use this city, of wanting the ones who live here, the ones who invade them, the tourists and so on, you know. So I think it's this diversity, you're mentioning it as holicity, it doesn't matter which word. That is what we have to really think about, I think. Not more than think about, work on.
Okay, before we continue here, I hope it's correct what I tell you. I'm not completely sure, but I heard it yesterday in the evening reception. We had a big, how do you call it, competitors for this session, because parallel to us, there was a session by UNESCO, organized by UNESCO, and there was one of the star architects and planners, Massimiliano Fuchsas, announced to having a speech at the same time. And as far as I heard, his speech was postponed from 11 to 3 p.m. And it will be in the place where we had this first evening reception in the theater. Yeah? So his presentation will be there at 3 o'clock. That might be a very interesting experience. So this was an organizational announcement. Okay. You cannot.
No, sorry, this is being talked at again. And I think here we have the urban conversations. And the next one, which is now delayed because we have overshot our time, is happening right now. So no lunch, just go on. So I think in fairness, that should come first here, rather than yet another person whose stuff you can read. Yeah, exactly. 10 minutes break.
Okay, so in 10 minutes, another interesting session here. And we have 10 minutes break now. Thanks, everybody, for the contribution. Thanks for those joining us. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the Congress. Thank you very much.